I said if we were to hit 100 likes that I would cover the entire 2021/2022 season, because it's technically playing in 2022, roster of BattleBots. And we've nearly tripled that goal now. You're all amazing. Can I just say that? That was well beyond my wildest expectations. A promise is a promise. You got to that 100 likes on that video, and we're going to now look over the 2021/2022 season of BattleBots. I'm going to try and not take too long at each robot, otherwise this is going to get very long. But let's not waste any more time, and let's get into this. Okay, edit in real quick. So 2 things. Firstly, this was recorded right when episode 1 was brand new. It's taken me a while to edit it because of the long length of the video. Secondly, they've put Triple Crown on the website, and now I'm finally going to talk about them because I wasn't sure if they were actually going to be in BattleBots or not this year. What do I even say about this robot? It is quite honestly one of, if not the most unique looking robot I have ever seen. It looks like Sidewinder's worst nightmare. From what I can tell, this team is not new to BattleBots, and they've even been on Robot Wars with the likes of Panzer. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens with this robot. I mean, it's safe to say it's not going to win, but man, when something is this unique, I'm just curious to see what it does, if anything. Now, first on our list, going in alphabetical order, is Big Dill. Now, I remember mentioning last time why I thought Big Dill was a good idea. Big Dill tries to take the idea of a grabber and lifter, but instead of having a separate motor for grabbing, it instead tries to shape the lifter to at least try and get some grabbing action to allow for easier suplexing. It allows more weight to be put into areas like the lifter motor, the drive, the armor, and honestly, it's a really ingenious idea. This time around, Big Dill as well looks to be far more refined. Now we're starting to see it take shape into something far more refined. The armor looks far more interesting and robust. Unfortunately, the forks still seem to be a little bit flimsy. I'm a little bit concerned that they're going to get bent if they go up against the spinner. But honestly, besides that, the robot is beginning to look more polished. Then we have Black Dragon, and honestly, I couldn't really tell you what has changed all that much. I'm sure there has been changes. I mean, there's very rarely will you see a robot get nothing at all from one season to another. But I think Black Dragon is a case of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. The robot likely just has gotten more polished, similar to the likes of Tombstone. And, well, we've seen how good Black Dragon can be. That beater is so good at landing humongous hits. It's got a pretty decent flamethrower on it, and it's pretty hardy as well. It's very hard to knock Black Dragon. It's simple, it's effective. I hope that they've got ways of dealing with other vertical spinners. I know that they had something last season, but I don't know if it was quite as effective as they maybe were hoping it to be. If they can show that they can bring that fight to that upper echelon of robots, then I think that Black Dragon is one to be scared of. Then you have Blacksmith, and honestly, did anyone actually see this one coming? I mean, I've heard how Rucker was teasing about turning Blacksmith into a vertical spinner, but I didn't think it would actually happen. I always thought Blacksmith would be one of those teams that would stubbornly stick to their guns. You know, this is how the robot is meant to be, so we're not changing it. But no, they have gone the way of trying to make this robot more competitive. Honestly, I am a little bit sad that Blacksmith has gotten rid of some of that aesthetic of the robot. You know, Blacksmith, with its hammer, I feel like it lost something there, but I can't deny that they're just trying to make the robot more competitive. Blacksmith was already onto something with those wedgelets. It was already very hardy in its previous iteration. all that it was really lacking was that damage dealing potential, that ability to just get so aggressive and really bring the hurt to its opponents. And, well, I can't argue that this is a much more clear-cut way of dealing damage. Then you have Blade, or as more people tend to know it as, Orby Blade. Orby Blade is a robot that absolutely wowed a lot of people back in its time at King of Bots. It's not like it's the robot that gathered so many wins, it's not had some like Tombstone run, but it's a robot that has definitely shown itself, and the team is extremely active. They've been building so many robots that are so nice to look at. There's just a few things that have me questioning how it's going to deal with some of the competition in the Battlebots roster. The robot has a Streamex, so it can't really run upside down, which could leave it vulnerable. The weapon, if it goes up against Tombstone, could get severely outgunned. However, on the flip side, Orby Blade's power means that it could pose a threat to other robots. It's going to be very interesting to see how Orby Blade does in this environment, and it's why I'm so excited to see it. It's a perfectly good robot in a brand new environment where it's either going to sink or swim. Blip, man. Now, Blip is an interesting thing. A robot by seems reasonable robotics, the same team behind Tantrum. It's a robot that, much akin to Tantrum, is made to be as compact as possible while still having a fair bit of power. And that can be hard to believe, I know, but Tantrum has shown that it's quite nasty in its own right, and Blip, well, they released a video in August that actually shows that the Flipper has a lot of power going for it. Honestly, I would not have expected that, but it sent Tantrum flying in its test footage. I gotta say that Blip being this compact yet this powerful is such a great sight to see because, well, I can see a Wedge Flipper struggling a bit, especially with the new rules in place. I think hourly arenas aren't a thing anymore in Battlebots, which is crazy. My concern still is that the forks look like they could be quite nastily bent if up against a horizontal or something. But honestly, I really hope that Blip can show what this design is capable of. A compact, powerful Wedge Flipper would be such a breath of fresh air in Battlebots. Like I mentioned before, far more common a design in the UK scene, but practically unheard of in the US. And given that we're going to have to wait at least another year before the UK teams can make their way across the pond, I think this would be a great way for this type of weapon design to show itself off. So I gotta root for Blip here. This could be great. Whew boy, Bloodsport. This went from a robot that was pretty okay, you know, had some nice wins, to a robot that just was so dangerous, such an intimidating robot, and, well, if we know anything from Team Bots and Stuff Robotics, we know that Bloodsport is going to be just as, if not even more deadly this time around. Bloodsport is an absolutely incredibly powerful bar spinner. Like, that type of design, it's so well done. The bar, you know, its weapons have shown that they can do an incredible amount of damage to their opponents. The robot is fairly robust. Honestly, my only point of concern, really, is the wedgelets. Because, well, as we saw last time around, it could rip off the wedgelets quite easily. But, as long as that isn't a major problem, then I think Bloodsport is one to keep your eye on, because it's only been getting better and better year after year. Then there's Captain Shrederator, and man, I'm gonna be honest, Captain Shrederator wasn't a robot that really bumped onto my radar that often, mainly due to the reliability issues. It's certainly been difficult, and up until recently, I haven't really been paying Shrederator that much mind. Its record has been quite spotty at times. However, the robot's reliability has been getting better. With that in mind, and the fact that the design has a nice slope to it for fighting horizontal spinners, it could be quite nasty this time around. I don't know if I'm going to go all in on Captain Shrederator, as the reliability might not be fully tuned in yet, and of course shell spinners are still struggling in the modern format, but it is nice to see robots getting an improvement, so hey, good luck to them. Next up, it's Claw Viper, and it's very difficult for me to have a lot to say on Claw Viper, admittedly, because, well, I don't think we really got a great look at what it's capable of yet. It's had some pretty nice fight. I mean, one of its greatest assets is it's clearly very well armored given its fight with Hijinx, but I don't think we've seen enough of Claw Viper to be able to truly judge its effectiveness. I like that there's more grabbers and lifters out there, and it's certainly a unique looking one, but I don't know what to think of it. I hope that they've been able to build on that reliability and that we get to truly see what Claw Vipers are capable of doing this time around, because who knows, a robot like this could prove to be quite effective. But I think I'm gonna have to wait and see on this one. Oh man, Cobalt. Now, I've already said a lot of what I want to say, but Cobalt is such a cool robot. I think it's such a wonderful design, and even in a field with lots of spinners, Cobalt, in my opinion, manages to stand out in its own right. The pedigree behind it of being built by Team Carbide, ran by Team Gigabyte, with the driver from Team Stinger, that is pretty impressive if you ask me. The design has shown that it's capable of doing massive amounts of damage, even to the likes of Duck, which is no small feat by any means. Honestly, like I mentioned before, if Cobalt's able to deal with the ground clearance issues that it had last time around, well, I see no reason why this couldn't be a huge contender, top 16 even. Man, it could be so good. Next up is the return of Copperhead, once again here to do what it does best. And honestly, if I were to rate drums for Battlebots, Copperhead might get second place, honestly. Minotaur still has my heart, but Copperhead is no slouch. In the space between the 2 years that it's been competing, it's gone from a decent drum robot, but with its flaws, to a robot that can actually be quite devastating. Copperhead is a very nice drum, very unique. It's definitely managed to set itself apart from the likes of Minotaur, but I gotta say, it is very nice to look at, very capable, and well, there's no doubt in my mind that it's gonna be even better this time around. Then there's Deadlift, and honestly, I don't think we really got to see a lot of this robot last time around. Another grabber and lifter, this robot's thing seems to largely be its toughness. It's a very strong robot, likely very capable of lifting its robot, likely very capable of easily lifting a robot high into the air. I mean, I better well hope so, given its whole gimmick is being buff. If it can't lift a robot, then that would be quite embarrassing. But the robot's toughness also helped it in fights against the likes of Jackpot, it managing to tip the robot over. Unfortunately, there's not a lot to say, as 2 of its fights last time around never even got aired. I don't know what this robot's quite capable of. Saying that, I'm looking forward to seeing what it can do this time around. Deep 6. Oh man, it really speaks for itself, doesn't it? You take one look at that, and it's obvious why I'm such a fan of it. It's absolutely overkill. If Tombstone turned into a vertical spinner. It's absolutely over the top. From what I can tell, it had the rules changed because it was just causing too much damage. I could be mistaken, by the way. When I say something, take it with a grain of salt, but that's what I believe happened. Deep 6 is such a memorable robot. Honestly, I have a lot of fun whenever I see this thing, because I know, win or lose, Deep Six is likely going to make an impact, and that's all I really expect from it. I'm not expecting some hyper-competitive machine with 16 wedgelets and, designs for like every robot ever conceived. I just expect it to go in, get that big bar up to speed, and just destroy everything in its way, and likely even itself. If it can do that, I'll be happy. And now from Fast Electric Robots, we have Defender, a brand new design from them, and one that's fairly unique. We've only ever seen one other type of robot do this type of thing as far as I'm aware, that being Hypothermia. And while Hypothermia seemed to have mixed results, I feel like Defender might be one of the better shots at it. One thing that I've pointed out and other people have pointed out is the armor seems to be a little bit, well, I really don't want to face any big spinners, that's all I can say. Saying that, the robot should be expertly driven. Like, for all the weaknesses that this may have in the armor department, I have a lot of faith that Team Fast Electric Robots can take this design and drive it to an expert degree, making it far more competitive than anyone else would be able to. So, I gotta say, Defender probably won't win. I don't even know if it'll get very far, but I think the fights could be ones to watch. So, hey, I'm keeping an eye out for it there. Now this one has a soft spot in my heart. Double Jeopardy. Now, Double Jeopardy is really fighting an uphill battle. They're trying to get projectile weapons to work in the battle box. This is a weapon type which just has so many things going against it. It doesn't help that Double Jeopardy isn't invertible, which is a confusing decision in my opinion, but man, it's just a fascinating thing to just watch as they try to continue to improve on this robot, trying to make it so that this weapon type, which really has no business working at all, and making it surprisingly effective. It's never won a fight, but at the same time, behind the scenes pictures have shown in the past that Double Jeopardy is capable of dishing out some nasty damage. If Double Jeopardy were able to land some choice hits and last the full 3 minutes, who's to say? I mean, look, I'm not going to pretend that Double Jeopardy's going to start winning all its fights, but I just want one win. I just want one win where Double Jeopardy can show, at the very least, what all of this time has taken. We've seen the robot slowly improve. It would just be poetic if all of that hard work were to pay off for just one W. Next up, it's Dragon Slayer. And Dragon Slayer gives me Electric Boogaloo vibes. Now, if you don't know who Electric Boogaloo is, it was a robot from Robo Games, and it was so impressive. Built by Orion Beach, who I believe is part of Team Scorpios, Electric Boogaloo was so simple, yet so effective. A big, powerful vertical spinner that was able to dish out some enormous hits. And Dragon Slayer seems to be in that kind of vein. The robot with a big, powerful vertical spinner, if they have that kind of power under the hood, then they could land some nasty hits on opponents. I am concerned that the wedge is kind of fixed like that. I worry that robots are going to get under them, which, I mean, it could be a big problem. But if they can find a way to deal with that, then who knows? It would be interesting to see how this robot can perform in its debut season. Next up, from Team Black and Blue Robotics, it's Duck. Oh, now this is always fun to see. This is a really great team to watch year on year. Do they come up with robots that are going to win the Giant Nuts? Not typically, no. But that little level of experimentation, the robots being so durable that they're like bricks in the arena, makes it so that you really just want to see what's gonna happen. Have they found some crazy new formula that's gonna give them a surprising level of success? How do they even make these robots so bloody durable? I'm still concerned about the potential lack of wedgelets. I'm really hoping that's what the gaps in the front are for. But, because if not, then this could have major ground clearance issues. But aside from that, this looks like your typical, incredibly durable, likely surprisingly effective type of design that you see from this team. Something Marvel movies, let's pretend that I watched Endgame. It's Endgame! Man, this is a robot that shows why I love to see the continuous improvement of a robot. Endgame is amazing! It's a robot that in the past I've compared to Aftershock being Battlebots' equivalent, but well, it's gone on to even greater fame. Exceptionally powerful, that vertical spinner can do some major damage. The wedgelets are lovely, they're fine-tuned and seem to get under pretty much everything. My god, I don't know what to say really. Endgame is still prone to the surprise loss here and there. I mean, it lost to Bloodsport, which I really didn't expect, but outside of that, they really seem to have this design locked down. Oftentimes we wonder what would happen if Bite Force were to return, and I gotta tell you, a battle between these two could be something for the ages. These robots going at it, it would be interesting to see what would happen. Would the more sensible design of Paul Ventimiglia take the crown? Or would the powerful weaponry and fine-tuned design of Endgame, which has competed in the more recent seasons, would allow Battlebots to finally have a robot that can take on Bite Force? Obviously, speculation, but the fact that I say that Endgame is a potential Bite Force killer, I couldn't give it any higher praise. So hey, if I was to put some money down on who is a giant nut contender, of course I gotta go for the current reigning champion. Next up, we have free shipping, and whew, what a robot. Honestly, I've mentioned it before, this is a robot that I don't expect to be competitive. I kind of have started to throw away that kind of hope, as much as I would love for it to have that Original Sin level of competitiveness, which, if you don't know, Original Sin was almost disturbingly competitive, like Bite Force levels only for even longer levels of competitive. Obviously, you can't really, it's kind of the reason why Original Sin would never be allowed on Battlebots, because a lot of people would sadly find it boring. Which is a shame. I think it's quite a nice robot, but free shipping is so much fun to watch because even with that in mind, the robot is always a dream to watch. It's typically not a robot that you're going to bet on winning, but at the same time, it's a robot that puts up an amazing fight each and every time. Gary Jin is an amazing driver. The builders behind this know what they're doing. Forrest J and whatnot. Like, they're all so good. Team Special Delivery knows what they're doing. Free shipping, while not competitive, is still a robot that can catch you off guard sometimes. And I'm always excited whenever I see it enter the battle box. So hey, I can't complain about a design that, while not competitive, gives me an entertaining match every time it comes out. Next up, it's Fusion, and this was a robot that was really quite interesting when it made its debut last season. It won some interesting fights, but did seem to struggle once the competition got a little bit more fierce, which I guess is to be expected with a design like this. This is by no means an easy design to create. A vertical spinner on the back, a horizontal on the front, wheels that have been designed so that it's technically invertible. This has gotta be a tricky robot to get right. But if there was a team that's gonna do it, it's Team Waiachi. I still really appreciate that the front's horizontal is shaped to be a reference to Son of Waiachi, their most legendary and successful robot. I also think the wedgelets on the back with the vertical are slightly longer, which is something I'm glad about. The last time that we saw it, I felt they were maybe a bit too short. I don't know any of the other major improvements that the robot has had. So I can only hope that as it heads into battle, we get to see some of that Waiachi power at work. And then we have Ghost Raptor. And Ghost Raptor is another unique design. We've seen plenty of lifter and spinner type designs, but very rarely would we see one that has a horizontal spinner. Honestly, I worry that that's almost counterintuitive a lot of the time. It managed to get some wins against the likes of Chomp and Deadlift. However, when it faced off against Hypershock, Jackpot, and Shatter, it definitely struggled a lot more. So I gotta hope that they fine-tuned it for this time around, but we're gonna have to wait and see on this one. It's definitely a legendary team, so hey, who knows? They might have done something special here. Now we have Gigabyte, and I've mentioned before, like earlier in this video in fact, that shell spinners do have a much harder time of it. I mean, because of the design, you can't have any ground scraping wedgelets because, well, the entire body spins. That wouldn't make a lot of sense otherwise. So the robot can never be quite that low to the ground. You're never going to get something with like Tombstone levels of power because, again, the full body of the robot is spinning, so you could never quite have that much bite. But it's a robot that has shown itself a fair few times throughout the season, especially last time around with a 78% win record. Honestly, that's pretty darn good, all things considered. The fact that they could take on so many robots and do surprisingly well at the same time shows a fair bit of merit. If there is a team that I have a lot of faith in making this design do well, it's gotta be Team Robotic Death Company. They're so good at what they do. The robot has continuously gotten better and better in the modern combat environment. Then we have probably the most uniquely shaped robot this season in Glitch. Glitch with its quite unique arrow-shaped wedge, as well as that massive egg beater. Like, good lord, when you look at it, the egg beater looks almost comically oversized compared to the robot. I really hope the robot is capable of getting that thing up to a decent speed, because that thing looks almost too large for it. On top of that, it has those mechanism wheels to allow it to drift around, which means that Glitch could be quite uniquely dangerous in an environment like this. If all goes according to plan, you've got a meaty weapon and a way to not ever be able to avoid it. And now we have what I consider to be the menace, the enemy to spinners everywhere. It's Gruff. I mean, actually, if you look at the record, Gruff has fought a lot of spinners. Gemini, Tombstone, Hypershock, Whiplash, Extinguisher. Did it fight Extinguisher's spinner form? I don't remember. But it fought Bloodsport, Marvin, Copperhead, Endgame, Railgun Max. It's fought a lot of spinners is what I'm getting at. And, well, it's perfectly designed to be able to deal with that. Its wedgelets at the front means it's got a decent chance of getting underneath opponents. And even if it doesn't, it's specially designed to be seemingly unbreakable. I do worry that those lifter arms by comparison don't look to be nearly as tough, but the robot has shown time and time again that it's incredibly difficult to take out. I mean, they managed to lift Tombstone, okay, something that I thought was impossible. So I gotta give it to Gruff. Next up, it's Hijinx. This is a robot that is quite interesting to see. A robot with a massive bar spinner to it. Honestly, this is a robot that could do a lot of damage. It definitely showed some of its growing pains in its initial season, but I've got to say that I still feel that there is a lot of potential to this design. The wheels being as far apart as they are mean they're not as easily snipeable as I sometimes fear whenever I see them. The robot seems to be fairly durable, and the bar looks like it could do a lot of damage to opponents. So, with that in mind, oh my goodness, I just read the interesting fact thing and the bar is made out of AR500. What? Now we have huge huge and incredible. Such a wonderful robot. Way better than it has any right to be. Now, as I mentioned before, it reminds me a lot of Team Gabriel. If you don't know Gabriel, Gabriel is a UK robot, which I believe has existed for longer. I know Hugh just had a smaller variant, but, you know, would swing down with a mighty mace. One of its big positives back in, you know, is that it's such a difficult robot to deal with, and Huge has that, but as well as that, it has a nasty bar spinner, which has proven itself to be very capable of dishing out some nasty hits. Normally, I'd be a bit concerned when a bar spinner is a little too high up, but it really has shown that it can really do a number on its opponent. Oh man, here comes the booze. It's Hydra, who had an absolute heel turn last season. Wow. That was certainly one of the most controversial fights that we have seen in a long time. Honestly, I'm not going to fault them for trying to be competitive. Like, the fact is, Battlebots is very spinner heavy. It's very biased towards spinners a lot of the time, so I can't fault Hydra for wanting to try and find ways to be competitive. What I can fault them on was the fight was really boring. I'm sorry, I'm here for a fun time, and both of those robots are so entertaining. Hydra is so good. It's one of the most powerful flippers I've ever seen. It's so good. It's so low to the ground. It's that typical White Archie speciality at work, and I was so disheartened to see that the fight was as boring as it was. Hydra, to me, is a robot that has so much going for it. I honestly hope that we get to see more of the exciting Hydra this time around, because when it gets going, it is so much fun to watch. Next up, it's Hypershock, a robot that's trying its hardest not to suck. It has definitely had a difficult time here and there. Not to say that, I mean, outside of 2018, it's never had a really bad season, but it's definitely had times where it's kind of struggled. Robots are getting tougher and tougher, and Hypershock, a robot that is trying to push itself, often comes with its own set of issues, which stops it from really having that true potential come out to play. A nice vertical spinner, incredibly fast and speedy, Hypershock has the makings of a robot that could really prove to be devastating. I just think they need that moment for everything to click into place. If they could drive that speedy robot all over the place, get that weapon up to speed, keep it all working, Hypershock could be quite devastating. It's been devastating before. I just gotta hope that their luck is a little better this time around. And now the return of a Battlebots legend, it's Icewave! Icewave is a robot that... I have a soft spot for this robot. It's a design that definitely hasn't got it easy in the modern season, and it doesn't look like it's had that much in the way of changes. It's had a paint job, but it doesn't look like it's had anything done to it to deal with the vertical spinners that are around nowadays. Saying that, however, Icewave is a robot that is still always fun to see, so I can't fault it for sticking with what can oftentimes actually work fairly well. Saying that, we don't know how well it's going to do in these modern seasons because, well, we barely even saw it. I believe it had one fight in 2020, I think it was like a bounty hunter thing. So, who knows? I'm getting a bit down on it because I'm a little nervous because when you see old designs come out and they don't have that much change to them, it can often be a bad sign because you'll often see like the really fine-tuned robots are just so fine-tuned that it's not even fair. But who knows? Maybe Icewave has a reason to stick to what works. From Las Vegas, we've just hit the jackpot, and well, the return of Jackpot, a robot that I honestly wasn't sure what to think of last time around. Those gigantic spinners looked like, on the plus side, would deal a lot of damage, but also look like they have basically no torque to them. Like, if it gets flipped over, it's basically done. Which, it was. It gets flipped over, it was basically done. But, in fairness, those weapons do also do a lot of damage. It looks like it has improved wedgelets at the front in order to get underneath its opponents, so kudos to it there. That's going to help Jackpot a lot in the competition. And I believe what is an improved Shremek, meaning that the robot actually has a chance of getting up when flipped over. Pardon my French, but anyway, let's look at the next robot. Alright, pardon my French. Now, I mentioned that I'm quite excited to see what this robot can do. I don't think this robot's going to be that competitive, much like Jackbox. I'm a little concerned that this thing will not be able to self-right if flipped over. It doesn't seem to have any Shremek at all, and it's going to have to rely entirely on that weapon. But if that weapon were to work, that thing is like... it's like 30%, 40% weapon. It's like if Deep Six became a drum spinner. Honestly, it looks quite nasty, doesn't it? I don't know what to expect from it, but my hope is that it can get up to speed, has a nice heavy drum, and it can just do some damage. Honestly, if it can do that, I will be more than happy. Man, I must be seeing double. No, wait, it's Jager! Man, I wish there were more clusterbots. That joke would have made way more sense if there was, like, the return of Gemini or something like that, or just more clusterbots, because it seems to be far less frequent nowadays in the heavyweight scene. Which, I mean, I guess it makes sense. Heavyweight spinners are getting devastatingly powerful. It must be a nightmare trying to design a 50-kilogram robot that can withstand that kind of punishment. But when I look at the Jager, especially that horizontal, it looks fairly robust. Honestly, I gotta think that this thing is going to be capable of absorbing a fair bit of damage. I don't know what to think about it in terms of effectiveness. The bar seems pretty effective looking. The wedgelets on the SawBlaze style robot are a little bit more concerning. But overall, it's a pretty nicely done looking clusterbot. It's got its work cut out for it for sure. Again, 50-kilogram robot against a 100-kilogram robot. It's always going to be a tough one to try and deal with. But I gotta root for them on that. You know, if they can even do vaguely well, it'll be so nice because it's so difficult to get a clusterbot to be competitive. I know that Jager has a third form which sadly couldn't make it this time around. Maybe next time. I'd honestly like to see that. But with that in mind, I gotta say, Jager, good luck to them. Then there's Kraken, and Crusher robots are a type of design that I do have a soft spot for. I mean, obviously, as you can tell, I love a lot of robot weapon types, but Crushers are something I have a particular soft spot for because when they work, they're so fascinating to watch, you know, just piercing through armor so easily, but they're so hard to get right that finding a good Crusher bot is so difficult. So it makes me happy that Kraken is really quite good. Sure, it doesn't have the crushing power of a robot like Quantum, but they've been continually improving that power. It's not a robot that's had any runaway success, but that's because it's an uphill battle getting the design to work as well as it does. So I gotta give them some dues there. Next up, it's Lockjaw, and let's get the one complaint out of the way. Well, the one chief complaint out of the way, and it's a very similar one to with Blacksmith. I do miss the original design. You know, the one with the actual jaw. You know, that classic Donald Hudson grabber. I do miss it. It was very unique, and it's a shame that every robot is seemingly just going to that one point of being a spinner. Not that I dislike spinners. I love spinners, as you could probably tell by now. But I love variety. Saying that, though, Donald Hudson has shown that if there's someone who's going to create a spinner, they're really good at it. Like, Lockjaw went from a robot that was fun to look at, but maybe wasn't the most competitive robot ever, to suddenly being one of the most vicious vertical spinners out there, at least in my opinion. The forks are very good at getting underneath opponents. The weapon is being continually adjusted season after season to just get the right amount of damage in. And them having that bit at the back, you know, which they'll add on to fight horizontal spinners. Kind of like how Whoops took care of Last Rites. It's honestly it's a very smart decision. Obviously, as we've seen, when they go against particular horizontals like Tombstone, it can still be a bit problematic because of those exposed, and well, they don't seem to have really many alternatives, if any, when it comes to horizontals, because, you know, all they have at the front of those forks, which could get bent out of shape by a horizontal. But, like, outside of that, it's a very capable robot that I don't have a lot of complaints for. Oh, this name feels ironic, but here's Lucky! Now, Lucky is a robot that I was definitely backing when I first saw it. Like, its design has roots in Ziggy and Son of Ziggy, which, if you don't know Ziggy, it dominated the super heavyweight division when it came into the fold. And Lucky, in today's day and age, is such a fascinating thing because we can see, at least partially, what can happen if it was to be brought into the modern day against a truly competitive field. Unfortunately, it's not been that easy for them. They have fought some really tough opponents in their time, you know, Bloodsport, Minotaur, Son of Waiachi. Like, they have had a tough time of it, and it's likely only going to get harder now that out of the arenas aren't a thing. We'll have to wait and see, but honestly, I'm just hoping that Lucky gets a better look in this time around and doesn't get fed to some higher tier robots. This must be the craziest Cinderella story I've ever seen. It's a Mad Catter. Mad Catter, honestly, is such a interesting robot that I don't think anyone really was expecting to do as well as it did when it came onto the scene. I think everyone was just like, huh, look at that. And then Mad Catter just came along and got a 50% win record in its 2019 run, got 71% win percentage on its last season. It's clearly a very capable design. In its latest design, it looks like they're trying to, like, refine it somewhat, you know, so that it can be more durable. The wedge, like, extends out to the side, so, you know, you're not going to get to its wheels very easily. The weapon looks like it's been better placed to do more damage. Its lifter arm looks more refined. Like, it looks like they're really trying to get Mad Catter to be a genuine contender here. Hey, I'm not going to complain. That is a perfectly good robot. And it's definitely interesting to see it whenever it does go up against a higher tier robot, because it's clearly shown that it's more than capable of bringing the fight. Now we have Malice, and I gotta say that this was a design that definitely caught my attention when it appeared. Its design looks like it's at least took a little bit of inspiration from Tombstone, but with definitely some stuff that makes it all its own. The robot has this lovely large disc spinner, the frame looks a lot more durable, the wheels are, like, the whole thing looks like it's taken some notes, but also been like, how can we make this different, and in our opinion, better? And honestly, its record isn't too shabby. I imagine that it's probably a robot that could endure a lot of damage. Like, obviously, we haven't seen a ton of it, but in its fight against Gigabyte, it nearly lasted the full 3 minutes. So something tells me that this ability to make the design a bit more compact and a little bit more durable likely helps it in a lot of ways. At least I assume it's more durable. It's very hard to get the scale of robots when you're watching the TV show. Trust me, I've seen the robots in person. They're not as small as you think they are. They are massive. You'd think this type of weapon design would be extinct, but Mammoth proves otherwise. It's such an interesting robot, isn't it? Like, even if you don't think it's that great, like, you've gotta admit that, like, a design like this is not something you'd ever expect to see in the Battlebots, nor would you expect it to do surprisingly well. Its only problem comes when it does face a truly nasty big spinner, you know, much like Uppercut, Hypershock. that's when it does start to fall apart. But honestly, aside from that, it's honestly done very well. It's pretty much a design that's never gonna get very far because there's not really a whole lot they can do against the big spinners, but like, it's a robot that's always fascinating to watch, and it's absolutely remarkable watching it go. The fight against Huge might be up there as one of my favourite Battlebots fights of all time. Just truly an insane, bizarre spectacle. If you haven't seen it, really, I recommend that you find a way to see it. Honestly, it is spectacular. And now for my favourite drum spinner of all time, it's Minotaur. And like, some people know that I love to dive down rabbit holes, and one of my favourite rabbit holes is just seeing what teams have built in the past. What has a builder been involved with in the past? Because oftentimes you'll either see a wide variety of designs, or you'll see the predecessors that led to this moment. And Team Reobots has their Turo line, and the Turo line has all kinds of robots. Minotaur may be their largest, but they have Turo Maximus, which is a slightly lighter heavyweight robot. Turo, its middleweight robot. Turo Classic, its other middleweight robot. Turo Light, its lightweight. Turo Feather, which is a feather version. Turo Junior, which is for the hobby weights. Mini Turo for the beetle weights. Micro Snail, which isn't a Turo robot per se, but I mean, let's just look at it. You know, Pico Turo, like, which is for the fairyweights, aka the British Antweight bot. Like, the fact that this is a design that goes all the way from 250 pounds all the way to 5.3 ounces, which is, you know, 113 kilograms to 150 grams, that's crazy. And it shows how much time they've put into making this type of design. They really know the ins and outs of this design and how they like to fine-tune it to make it as best as they possibly can. And like I've mentioned before, Daniel Freitas, an incredible driver, so aggressive when he gets going. It's so much fun to watch the team go. It's so much fun to watch him, honestly, as well. And like I've mentioned in the past, Daniel Freitas, despite the way he appears on TV, is a really nice person based on his interviews that I saw at RoboGame. Honestly, Team Reobots is a team that I absolutely adore. If there's a team that I hope could make it all the way to the giant nut, it would probably be them. Who saw this one coming? The return of Overhaul. Now, Overhaul has had a mixed record in its time, but they've really been trying their hardest to get this robot to be as best as it possibly can be. The robot has had some major design changes to it to try and make it more competitive, which I can honestly respect. It must be so difficult to get a design like this to work. Grabber and lifters are designs where, you know, if it doesn't work, you are in a world of trouble. They've got 4 slots, it seems, for addition, you know, so they can have a bunch of hinged wedgelets or forks or whatever you want to call them. And yeah, honestly, it looks like it's going to have much improved maneuverability. Honestly, this looks like it should be a lot better than the previous incarnations. And here we go now with P1 racing along the track. This design is one that I'm so glad had an improvement last year because it's such a fascinating design. There's a reason I was excited to see it. The robot looks so sleek. You don't really see any front hinge robots in Battlebots, and I think now, especially now that there's no out of the arena, it might even be a more preferable design choice, just because being able to push your opponent away is likely going to be an effective solution in a lot of these situations. The robot's got such a lovely aesthetic to it that I really adore. There's not a lot to say, but I'm really hoping we can see the potential of this weapon type, because I don't think we've really truly gotten to see it at its full potential yet. Now, I remember talking about Pain Train in a previous video about new Battlebots that I was excited to see, but I neglected to notice that the robot has a problem of bucking upwards, or it used to at least, which was a major problem because vertical spinners and drum spinners need that ground clearance. If they can't get as low as possible, then that spinner is only going to do, well, it's not going to do as much damage as it should. and it's ultimately going to fall victim to other robots that have a better ground. Saying that, it looks like they might have fixed that this time around. The robot looks like it's less likely to buck about. I won't spoil anything, but I have seen its first fight. But yeah, it seems that they've gotten the locomotion figured out, and now we might get to see what that drum is capable of. Something old, something new. Here is Perfect Phoenix, driven by Doom Kid. Perfect Phoenix is really something to look at. If you're not aware of Perfect Phoenix's past, it was a robot designed by Paul Ventimiglia called Brutality. And I believe, if I remember correctly, it was the last robot that fought Biohazard. Biohazard being a legend of classic BattleBots, and Brutality, putting the final nail in the coffin that put Biohazard into retirement. This is memory, I don't quite remember if that's exactly what happened, and there's pretty much no footage, but here's a picture of Biohazard that apparently came from after its fight with Brutality. Now, Perfect Phoenix, back in BattleBots, with a bar designed by Ray Billings, driven by Doom Kid, who has done exceptionally well, a very fearsome fighter in the Beetleweight scene. If you haven't watched BattleBots, I definitely recommend it if you want to see Doom Kid in action. It's such a strange combination, and I still feel like older designs definitely have a harder time fighting off against newer designs which have been refined. This is a design from 10 plus years ago. It's definitely going to have a more difficult time than some of the modern robots which have been specifically designed to fight the likes of Bite Force or Minotaur. Next up is Rampage, and Rampage was admittedly a robot that I heard a lot of people saying positive things about, but I just hadn't taken much notice of it before. But this time around, the robot definitely looks to have had some refinements to it. The four kind of weird looking wedge-lip things have been replaced with a more robust wedge. Hopefully they do still have some wedgelets that I'm going to hope are a little bit better than the ones from before. The robot has gone from what looks to have been 2-wheel drive to a full 4-wheel drive system. The bar looks a little nicer. It's just all around a much better package all in all. This is a design which doesn't look like it would take the world by storm. It's a 4-wheel drive vertical spinner. This isn't one where I'm going to go this is doing something that's never been seen before. But sometimes, it's doing what works, And I don't want people to try and unnecessarily add on extensions that really would only hinder the robot if they don't feel confident in using them. Although I will ask the Rampage team, look, no disrespect, how did you lose by judges' decision to Black Widow? I'm not judging. I just really want to know I just want to know what happened, because that sounds like it must have been, it either sounds like Black Widow must have had, the best fight it ever had, or something went horribly wrong. Now we get to Retrograde from Team Bots and Stuff Robotics. Like I mentioned, the same team behind Bloodsport. And as I found out, has the guy from Team Just Cuz Robotics working on it. Honestly, if you haven't checked out their channel, absolutely be sure to. They'll often talk about their robots, what they did, how they did, and they've definitely got some unique designs that they've worked on. I think that it's really interesting to watch that kind of stuff, and I think you guys might like it as well. It's got that similar type of lifter suplexer that Big Dill has, but on the back is an undercutter. As I mentioned, I feel like the idea is meant to be that it suplexes robots behind it into that undercutter, which you're not going to get a chance to block it because it's behind the robots. It's definitely interesting to see the ways that they've tried to make the robots semi-competitive, and the robot looks really robust for something that has 2 weapons to it. I don't know how well the entire machine works, but given the people behind it, I've got very little reason to believe that it isn't perfectly efficient. Of course, 2 weapons against a robot that's putting all of its attention into one is always going to be a challenge, but it's never impossible. So, with that all being said, it's going to be very interesting to see how Retrograde fares. Speaking of robots that really shake things up and make you question who's going to win, we gotta talk about one of my favorite robots in recent memory, Ribbot. Honestly, Ribbot is such a strange design when I think about it. This big frog robot had no right being as efficient as it was, but it's so good. It's so good. Like, it's compact, it's durable. The weapons, while maybe not the most powerful ever, do just enough damage that it can do the job just fine. Obviously, I don't think it's ever going to win the giant nut, but sometimes being a good robot isn't just about winning the giant nut. Sometimes it's about just being competitive enough that you can shake the formula up. You know, a robot could be a shoo-in to go deep into the tournament, but then they get drawn up against a robot like Ribbot, and suddenly, for just a moment, you're thinking, oh, what's going to happen here? You know, could this scupper their chances? Now, Riptide is a robot that I mentioned before that I'm excited to see. It's very simple as to why. The robot has a massive beta bar at the front. It's got those lifting forks as well, which likely give it an alternative weapon, you know, should the drum spinner break down. And honestly, based on the video footage we've seen, it looks like the beta bar has plenty of power behind it. It'll be interesting to see how this thing goes, as it looks like it only has 2-wheel drive, so who knows how fast it can move around the battle box. But I feel like this is a robot that if it gets underneath an opponent, it is going to really lay the smackdown on them. This is definitely one that will be hard to deal with if a robot isn't prepared. Rotator is a robot that I never expected on its debut that I'd be talking about as a genuine contender. When its fight against Witch Doctor, I actually kind of laughed by how quickly it got defeated. I'm willing to admit that. I laughed because I just saw it go in and get demolished so quickly. But honestly, Rotator has improved by leaps and bounds. I've noticed people have pointed out a previous robot by one of the builders, Victor Soto, and how it looks like it's now taking inspiration from that. Again, I could probably make the complaint of, oh, it's kind of taken away from one of the aesthetics of Rotator where it was symmetrical so it could rotate and there was another weapon. But competitively, I get it. You know, they're trying to get Rotator to have the best chance it can, and I've mentioned before that focusing on one weapon is usually the way to go. And you can't argue with the success. Rotator has been massively improving in recent years. Like, the 2016 season seems like a distant memory at this point. Honestly, they've done so well for themselves. And the robot is really durable. Like, I remember it fighting Tombstone, and Tombstone getting sent flying. I didn't expect that. I was expecting Rotator to absolutely stand no chance whatsoever, but it managed to just barely win. I gotta say, with that all in mind, Rotator is a robot that could genuinely make it to the top 16. And now for a giant nut winner, at least in my dreams, it's Rusty. And Rusty is such a wonderful robot in my opinion. It's never going to be competitive. Let's get that out of the way. It's never going to be competitive. Saying that, what the hell? It won 2 fights? What? Kraken? How? What? Kraken? No. What the fuck? Oh my god, Kraken, I need to rewatch. I don't remember that. I don't remember that fight at all. Oh man. We were going on about competitive designs. Here's a robot that's taken what really shouldn't have been that competitive a design and has really honed it down. Here is SawBlaze. Now, SawBlaze, a robot, is such a intricate design, something that really should have failed right away. A robot with this many moving parts should have had an absolute struggle at the very least. But from the beginning, the team has absolutely nailed this formula and have only been getting stronger. Honestly, even back when they had the SawBlade, it was such an interesting thing. It was able to get the sparks going. It only did minor damage, but it didn't really matter. And now they've moved on to that big spinning disc. Again, in a way, I'm kind of sad that it's now only the spinning disc. I kind of wish they still had the Saw part of the SawBlaze name, but they still got the Blaze part at least. That flamethrower is still as prominent as ever. This is a design that has absolutely done way better than I think anyone could have reasonably expected in its debut. Back in the day, people would have looked at that and probably think, oh, it's interesting, but won't get very far. But now, it's absolutely a robot that you can say would likely make it into the top 16, and you're not likely to hear too many arguments to the contrary. It's always nice getting to see alternative designs like this, getting to just be really refined and have that moment in the sun, and SawBlaze is so consistently performing in its wins. It's so consistent in its performances that it's always going to be a treat to watch. Speaking of alternative designs, one type of design that definitely has a bit of an uphill battle, especially nowadays, is the Axebot. But Shatter continues to prove why it might be the Axebot, or Hammerbot, but the same design really, of Battlebots. The design is incredibly durable. The axe swings down with such ferocity. It's so capable. The forks at the front mean that it has a better chance of getting under its opponents. And honestly, it's such a great design. Like, there's so many things that I could talk about, but it's clearly been worked on and refined from the days of Mega Melvin into something that is truly something to watch. They figured out all those problems that made it less reliable. They made it so incredibly durable, so very powerful, and the drifting means that it's got almost unparalleled moving abilities. That means that it's really difficult for a lot of robots to take on. Even the likes of Witch Doctor struggled to take it out. I'm hoping that Shatter can go the distance. I don't know if they'll win the Giant Nut, I don't think they will, but I'm really hoping that they can show the potential of the Axebot. The last time we saw an Axe or Hammerbot go that far was Blacksmith, and that was years ago now. So I'm really hoping Shatter can prove that the design still has merit. And now we have Scorpios, another design that used to come down with the saw arm, but now has a nasty spinner attached to it. Honestly, this robot seems very durable in a lot of its fights. Sure, it's definitely had times where a robot has ripped chunks off of it, but it's proven time and time again, in my opinion, that it's definitely a robot to not take lightly. It doesn't seem to get quite the attention that SawBlaze does, but it's definitely shown in the past that it's just as capable in a lot of ways, and it has that unique part of the design, well, at least it's not one that I see all the time, where it's got a part of its front bit slightly raised, which I believe is actually to high center robots so that they can't get away before the hammer saw comes down to deal some nasty damage. And hey, this is a robot that has gotten plenty of success under its belt, and I think, it definitely deserves any of the recognition that it gets. So hey, good luck to Team Scorpios. Honestly, I hope that they do well this season, just like always. Now we get to Slammo, and I've mentioned before that I've always been rooting for Team Danby. Their designs have always been slightly different, with a little bit of character to them, and while Slammo seems to be more in the line of slightly more competitive types of designs, it's still a type of robot which isn't guaranteed success. Grabber and lifters, like I've mentioned, have a much more difficult time of it. But I really like the approach they've taken, because it's makes the weapon a much more fundamental and larger part of the design. Don't get me wrong, I love the types of robots like Complete Control, but I feel like this is the type of design that we'll slowly start to see more and more of with grabbers and lifters. It's not had major victories just yet. Its wins have been against Pain Train and War Easy, which I don't think anyone was expecting to be like giant nut contenders. But even when it fought the likes of Black Dragon and Witch Doctor, it survived surprisingly long. It means that there's a fair bit to the design, and it's proven that they finally started to shake some of those reliability issues that have plagued the team for this long. That's a great thing to see, because I've always known that underneath those reliability issues lie some designs that could do really well. And Slammo has shown in some videos that it could even suplex a walker robot. And if you don't know, walkers are double the weight. So the fact that they'd be able to even suplex those types of robots shows there's a lot to go for here. There's a lot of potential. This is probably my favourite grabber and lifter on the BattleBots roster this season. So again, I really hope this one goes far and shows the potential of this type of design and the potential that I feel like Team Danby has always had with their designs. And then we have Smee is definitely a unique robot. Again, I love when robots try and do something different. You know, I love it when a robot either has a lot of character, tries to do a design particularly well or in a unique style, and this is definitely unique. An undercutter design where the robot is exceptionally long. The idea, I think, being that it can wrap around, you know, it can get at like wheels and parts that are normally better protected. But like, honestly, that's fascinating to me. I've just looked at its BattleBots page and I'm looking at like everything is just ease. What the oh my god. Oh my god. Oh wow. Next up is Sub-Zero, and I think apart from Hydra, it's the only remaining holdout of this classic style of American launcher. You'll have to forgive me if I'm completely wrong there. I have just tried saying Smee for like a minute long, so you'll have to excuse me on that one. But the point is, this is a design that's surprisingly not very common. It's a shame because obviously, you know, it's definitely proven that it's a very capable type of robot. One thing I like to see is the hinged wedgelets at the front that mean it's more likely a robot will end up on top. I am a little concerned because in some ways it does seem to have the defender problem where the armor looks a little bit like it could get quite badly broken in some cases. But in other situations, the robot has shown a nice improvement over time. It struggled in the early goings trying to fight against some robots. Some of the really tough robots are proving to be quite nasty, such as Cobalt. However, when it gets going, it's perfectly capable in its own way. It doesn't quite have the same reputation as the Team Inertia Labs, the Goliaths like Bronco or Toro, but honestly, I think it deserves its own fair share of credit. You know, it's fighting an uphill battle much like Team Inertia Labs, and it's doing surprisingly well at it given the circumstances. Next up is Switchback, and I do need to make a correction. Switchback does not do the thing like SawBlaze. I was mistaken because the robot does seem capable of lifting it, but that's not the main way that they use their weapon, so apologies. I still think it's really cool though, and massively over the top. The robot looks decently compact. It's definitely got some issues that I'm a little bit concerned about. You know, what happens if it gets flipped over? You know, what's about its ground clearance game? It looks like it's very steep. I hope it's got some wedgelets or some sort. But aside from that, it's such a fun looking design that it's going to be interesting. I just want to see it hit a robot once. Please. Now, I think we've seen plenty of these as we walk through the supermarket. It's Tantrum. And I remember when I first brought up Blip in the new robots list, that I was sad that Tantrum had foregoed its original flipper routes to take this new approach. However, I don't want that to take away from how good the robot actually is. It's so incredibly compact. The weapon has been getting better and better. Again, it's such a unique weapon type that we don't really see anywhere else as it gets up to speed and then flings out almost like it's throwing a punch to you. Like, I do have a lot of respect for how powerful Tantrum is. You know, it's not like something that's going to do incredible amounts of damage, but again, it's just powerful enough that it can get the job done in a lot of cases to allow it to get those damage points, along with impressive durability. Yeah, there's a lot of good things that I can say here. It's a perfectly capable robot that has been continuously getting better and better. And man, when I saw it fight Tombstone that first time around, I was stoked because, again, that durability is amazing. It's almost unparalleled. But speaking of Tombstone, oh man, The king of the horizontal spinner, in my opinion. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the likes of like Carbide, who I consider like probably one of the best horizontal spinners as well. But Tombstone is so simple that it's criminal just how good it is. It knows exactly what it wants to be. And it has all of that weapon power at the front. Sure, the frame is never the most durable thing. Sure, the wheels stick out. But the fact is, you're not getting to those wheels. You're not likely to get to that frame unless you're really good. Chances are, you'll get to that weapon. Ray will keep that weapon at you, or he'll bait you into getting into that weapon, as we've seen plenty of times where he'll turn his back and then suddenly switch around. Again, you're not getting to those wheels. Now, it's definitely been having a harder time as of late because robots are really starting to refine themselves. We've actually seen that Tombstone is so influential that a robot not having a horizontal option is seen as a real problem because of robots like it. Well, mainly because of it. You know, if you're not prepared for Tombstone, you can end up with your run being pretty much over right there. It's such a powerful robot that even as its win percentage starts to go downwards, it doesn't really change anything. It's such an influential robot. It has earned its status as a legend in Battlebots, and you know, the fact that every robot needs to prepare itself for them and that still comes away with plenty of wins under its belt shows that it's without a doubt one of the most vicious spinners even now. Then there's Uppercut, and I'm going to be honest, I did not expect anything from Uppercut when I first saw it. I saw it and I thought, huh, that's kind of neat. That's a cute little design. I like that. You know, it's got the fist to really uppercut its opponents. But I thought, you know, outside of a cute little design, I didn't think it was going to go very far. You know, my God, was I wrong? This robot is so impressive. It's got so much power behind the design. The robot can keep on going and going. Honestly, it's got so many KOs under its belt against high tier opponents that it's impressive to see, really. Uppercut definitely is one to keep an eye on. It's one of the more unique looking vertical spinners, at least in my opinion. The design of the fist is just, it's really fun. And it went from a design that I thought was cute, you know, and I liked the look of, but I didn't think was going to be very competitive, to one where I look at it and go, is this going to get into the top 16? Probably. And I got to give them kudos for that. And now we're on to Valkyrie. And Valkyrie is an absolutely wonderful looking robot. Like, if you get a close look at it, there's so many details going on with its decal. And the weapon of the robot itself is also perfectly good. Like, it's had some pretty good fights against some robots. You know, it's had a few knockouts under its belt. You know, in fact, a fair few of its wins have been by knockouts. So the weapon definitely has a lot going for it. There's not a lot to say because it's just interesting to watch it go. But it's definitely one of the more refined undercutters that I've ever seen in the heavyweight division. So I've got nothing but good things to say about it, really. And now we have guaranteed top 16 contender. Honestly, if this robot were to win the entire thing, I would be quite pleased. It's Whiplash. Whiplash, a robot which I mentioned seems almost tailor-made for the Battlebots formula. Its four-wheel drive means that it's so quick, it's so agile, it can continuously be aggressive. It's just durable enough that it really takes the likes of Tombstone to take it out. Its spinner means that it can get damage. The lifter means that it can get control points. I gotta say, it's such a great thing to watch. I absolutely have a lot of fondness for this design. Whiplash is such a great robot, and its win-loss record is only getting better and better. So, I've got no reason to believe that it won't get into the top 16. So, I've gotta say that Team Fast Electric Robots have got a massive force on their hands. And now we move on to who I think is genuinely a giant nut contender, Witch Doctor. Witch Doctor, a robot that is so incredibly vicious in the battle box. So capable. It nearly beat Bite Force, for goodness sake. Like, that was such a fascinating fight to watch.
Like, I already kind of figured Bite Force would win that fight, but Witch Doctor did so well, and the robot continuously trying to improve and work on itself. Its weapon able to do insane amounts of damage and is so low that for the most part they've never needed wedgelets. The robot seems particularly durable so that only the most tough and powerful robots really seem to have much of a chance of taking it out. It's honestly been so well designed, so well driven, it's easily one of the best vertical spinners out there. Now it's going to be interesting to see what will happen if it fights something like the new and improved Endgame, but I'd love to watch that fight, to be honest with you, because that fight, honestly, if I were to make a prediction for the grand final, like the final fight, it would probably be Witch Doctor versus Endgame. It's just my guess, really, but obviously we're a long way off. And finally, we see Yeti. Now, I swear Yeti was going to be rid of those lifting forks. In a way, I'm kind of glad because those lifting forks give Yeti some of its character, but man, Yeti proved itself last time around when it did ditch those forks that drum can be nasty. It is such a powerful drum spinner when it wants to be. Yeti is a very capable design that can shake up the formula when it gets going. If a robot isn't prepared when it goes up against Yeti, it has the potential to get sent flying, much in the way that Rainbow did. It's a very unique type of design, but I'm always interested to see how Yeti's going to perform every single year that it competes. But now with that, we are done. My goodness. Now, some of these might be shorter than others, and that's just because at the time of recording, the full unfiltered thing is over 2 hours long, and I'm not subjecting you to that. I want to try and trim it down quite substantially. I don't know how much so I can do that, but we'll have to wait and see. But it has been a joy to get to talk about all these robots with you. I apologize that it came out after the season has already started. I really hope that that doesn't interfere with your enjoyment of this video. But, man, I just want to say again my appreciation for all the support on these videos. It's been really quite remarkable. I want to thank you all so much for that. And really, I hope that we can continue throughout 2022. I'm going to be working on more videos. Hopefully, I'll be working on some more Battlebots videos in the future. Oh, and make sure to leave a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and hit that notification bell to be notified of more videos. I do a variety of content, but like I said, more Battlebots videos are hopefully going to be coming in the future. But with that being said, I will see you all in the near future. Bye, guys!